Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM, NBA Radio, Forbes, the sporting news. He joins us now to talk all things NBA with us right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Mitch, what's up, pal?
Hey, I'm doing great. Looking forward to the start of the NBA championships tonight, or I should say the Western Conference Finals. How are you guys?
Yeah,
all right?
Man. This is kind of the spearhead for that discussion about changing the format of the playoffs, maybe reseeding the last four.
You know what? I don't want to do it. I mean, I'd rather they had the top 16 teams in. I think Denver ended with a pretty good record in the West and didn't make it, but I'd still rather have the East and the West. I don't think Adam Silver is going to make that change. That would be that's a seismic change to your playoff situation if you were to do that. It's great to talk about, but I'd still rather have the East and the West. And I think the way LeBron has operated the last few years, he'd rather have the East versus the West because this is his best, most direct, path to a finals. This year, we'll see.
Right. Now, Mitch, you had tweeted the other day that is LeBron going to be denied a finals trip by these Celtics? Yeah. You said, please.
I know.
Yesterday, are you erasing that tweet? Are you going to be Kobe Bryant and unliking that?
I don't erase. I don't delete or erase tweets. I stand by my tweets. Listen, guys, I mean, I didn't expect LeBron to play as badly as he did yesterday. To me, it starts – forget about the supporting cast. It always starts with LeBron and how he goes about his business, and he was in a very much of a deferential mood. Too much for me. I always want LeBron to come out and just take over the game right away and impose his will, put a stamp on it. He didn't do that yesterday, and they just got blown out, and he had an awful game. They all had an awful game. I expect Game 2 he will do what we all think he'll do and try to take over from the start, and maybe they'll get him running downhill toward the basket more, giving him more picks, more screens, whatever they have to do to confront really a very, very good. I mean, the one thing when I think we all looked at this matchup was, Boston's got a very good defense because they've got quickness, length, and size on the perimeter. And so that makes it tough for these teams. They've built the type of team that they think is going to match up with Golden State down the line because length is such a huge thing, length and quickness with guys like Tatum and Brown and obviously Marcus Smart. But I still have a lot of faith in LeBron. I'm not throwing it in the towel because it's one game, but obviously Boston played a tremendous game. And, the interesting thing about them is besides having the great home court record, they haven't played from behind yet in the series. And I think for a young team, that's important. It's much different when you're either tied and, you have home court advantage because you always know you have that in your back pocket, or you're ahead in a series. I want to see what happens if they fall behind in the series, as I expect they do. I think I call Cleveland in 6. How that young team is going to react in the pressure of now having to make plays with a season on the line, perhaps, elimination game, stuff like that. Yes, they were 3-3 with Milwaukee, but, to me they never had trouble in Game 7. So let's see if Cleveland can actually win maybe 2 in a row and put Boston down for the first time in the playoff series and see how they react.
Hey, Mitch, what did we all seemingly overlook about Boston?
Well, I don't think I thought this was going to be a tough 6-game series for Cleveland. I didn't overlook anything. I think the thing where I didn't like their chances were in a tight situation. And yesterday there were yesterday was a blowout, but this, at some point I figured the loss of Kyrie Irving is going to catch up with this team because in a pressure-packed moment, last 2 minutes of a game, who are you going to call on if you're Boston? Is it going to be Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford? None of these guys have track records for making big shots in playoff action. So, as long as Cleveland had LeBron and Kyrie wasn't around, I'm thinking, LeBron's going to do enough to win 4 games and get back to a finals. That's why I like their chances. And, that's the thing about Kyrie Irving. Let's not forget, Kyrie Irving is one of the top offensive players. You saw what he did in Cleveland when he had LeBron, when he was, the Robin to LeBron's Batman. He's a sensational player, getting his shot when he has to at the end of shot clocks. We've discussed that a lot. I also think that's going to catch up with Cleveland. They don't have a number 2 option now, as you see. In a game like yesterday, if they had Kyrie Irving, you know what? He can keep him in a game like that. He can go out and score, 15, 20 points in a quarter. They don't have that type of player now. So I think this Kyrie thing is a very interesting thing from both standpoints.
Now, if the Celtics win this series, does it give NBA teams hope that you don't need that mega superstar to win, that you can win by committee?
Well, they're going to, let's say they win the series. That means they'll have won the East. The easy part's over. Then they're going to have to play Golden State. And, I'm picking the Warriors, by the way, in 5 games. I don't think Houston has the goods to beat this team. Houston's talking a great game from Clint Capella saying we're a better team. Golden State, you know what? Teams that win look for things like that. That's registered with these guys. But anyway, I think what you're going to see after that is you don't have to tank like Philadelphia tanked. You can rebuild your team very quickly like Danny Ainge did, miss the playoffs maybe a year, and if you're smart and if you're adroit at picking up assets, you can get this thing going again with 10 or 11, 10 new players and a great head coach who, once again, as you saw yesterday, he takes advantages of mismatches. They identify stuff. His players, he plays to their strengths. So, no, I think it's more of a how the team was built type of thing than this is. They're not going to necessarily win the title. I mean, they're going to, if they make the finals against Golden State, I still think it's a 5, maybe a 6-game series. But that's where it's really going to show up. They're not having Kyrie Irving, and now you got to play Durant. And you got to play Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, guys who can make big shots in big spots.
Yeah, now, when they get, when Kyrie and Hayward come back, how do you think that changes or affects this team? Does it make them go from a 55-win team to, say, a 65-70-win team? Or, I look at it as, yeah, you get Kyrie and Hayward back, but how does that affect the guys who got you to this point?
Well, your 5 best players are going to be who? It's going to be Kyrie. If you got to figure Hayward, Brown, Tatum, and Horford. That has to be your lineup. So Rozier has to. Rozier's not as good as Kyrie Irving. Am I missing anybody? Marcus Morris goes back to the bench. They'll be loaded. Look, Kyrie's had knee problems. Let's say he stays healthy from here on out, and let's say Gordon Hayward comes back and he shows no ill effects, no after effects of his deal. Yeah, they're going to move to the top of the East, I would figure. I'd figure they will supplant Toronto. I would figure that with the development of Brown and Tatum, you're going to have 2 very young guys who are going to be, premier defenders. And Tatum's got a chance to be a great offensive player. We see already in his first playoff season, he's scoring 20 points like it's no problem. He and Donovan Mitchell. I still can't get I can't get a really answer out of anybody I interview on Sirius about any of these former players about how do you account for these guys just walking into the playoffs and not showing any stage fright. But anyway, Boston should be, and of course, I've also got to couch this too. Philadelphia's on the way up, we know that, but also where's LeBron going to be?
No doubt.
Because if you're talking regular season, with the way LeBron treats regular seasons, that's one thing. But, Boston on paper would have, I think, the top team. And then again, they got to make decisions on what are they going to do with Marcus Smart. They never pay their guys, by the way. The only guy they're going to pay is Kyrie Irving. They paid Al Horford to come in from Atlanta, right? They didn't pay Avery Bradley. There's some other guys who left without contracts. Oh, that's right, Isaiah Thomas. He wanted the big contract. They were never paying him. So they got a lot of moves to make, but they're in a good place, obviously.
Tonight you get the Western Conference. Obviously the Rockets, went out, got Chris Paul. They tried to add another piece, but it's still the Warriors, right?
Well, what they did was they added Chris Paul, and that's big because, when James Harden has confronted problems in the past in the playoffs, last year, Game 6 San Antonio, they claim he ran out of gas. It looked like he just quit on his teammates. There was nobody there to pick up the slack. You saw what Chris Paul did in their closeout game. When James Harden was under the weather, Chris Paul went nuts against Utah. Donovan Mitchell, got knocked out of the game. That was a huge deal. And he had 22 in that third quarter. But in the fourth quarter, Chris Paul scored 20 at 13 straight down the stretch. Basically, he made every three-point shot. He had only made, I think, 7 threes in the first 4 games of that series, and he made 8 that night. So, you know what, that's a big deal for them because if Harden shows, against Golden State, you have to score. Like Alvin Gentry said after his, the New Orleans coach after their series, he said, I figured coming in, we had to score 115 points a game to win. Now, you know what, if you just have James Harden, that's a problem. You can, they can focus on James Harden. Now you have Chris Paul, that could be different. But the other thing they did, and to their credit, Daryl Morey also brought in guys like, Luke Mbah a Moute and P.J. Tucker, and he still has Ariza. These are long, athletic, not great, necessarily top-notch athletes, but still guys who can defend on the perimeter, which you need against Golden State. So they think offensively and defensively they're equipped. We'll see. That's a tall order. Golden State, we know when the playoffs start and the way they've played so far in moments with Steph Curry, and he's healthy, and the way he moves, and Durant, when he can take over games, guys, they're better than everybody else And, I mean, it's not close. That's the gap between Golden State and Cleveland. That's the gap with Houston, unless Houston improves differently. That would be the gap with Boston and everybody else. It's just that you've got a team that's won titles, that won last year with Durant, that knows what it takes to win. That's a huge thing. When Steve Kerr said the other day, in response to the question about, well, the Rockets think they're hungrier, Steve Kerr said, well, we've won championships. They know Houston's still trying to figure it out.
Yep.
Golden State knows what they can and can't do, how they have to play in these situations. They've been through pressurized moments. I mean, a lot of these guys were down 3-1. I know they lost the finals later, but they were down 3-1 in Oklahoma City, and they came back. And they've won tough road games in the playoffs. So, yeah, I got to think tonight if everybody's okay. And Steph Curry. Now, the thing I don't like about this layoff for them is Steph Curry. To me, this layoff wasn't good. He needed repetition. He needed more games. We'll see how that knee is. We'll see how he is timing-wise. It's more timing-wise than anything. I think they probably wanted to play, just 2 or 3 days after. I don't know what the rest has been, but it seems like they've missed a week or so. So that's something to look out for. I just want to see if Houston really has the goods like they think they do.
Should be fun tonight, 8 o'clock, 97.3 ESPN. Real quick, Mitch, there's some reports in Philly that the Sixers would be interested in Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. First, Paul George, Paul George fit for the Sixers. There's some, talk he might not be the best locker room guy, yada, yada, yada. Would you think that's a good fit for Philly going to get Paul George?
I don't, I'll put it this way. Because Paul George has had difficulties in, when he was in Indiana, and sometimes he's really can be really tough on his own point guards, and more tough on his own point guards than he is on himself. But you know what? I've always thought Paul George is a Laker. Magic Johnson didn't clear out cap space for DeMar DeRozan, making a trade now. He cleared out cap space for LeBron James and Paul George. So I would think that Paul George, look. Never say never with Oklahoma City. Could we resign there? I guess it's a possibility. But I always thought that Paul George wanted to go back home, and home for him is Southern California. So I would discount Philadelphia.
Also, Dwayne Casey fired in Toronto.
Yeah.
I know you wrote about that.
Yeah, I go back a long time with Dwayne. We all do if you've been around the league. He's a real good guy, deserved better. To me, you know what? I mean, it's a roster situation there, a roster problem. Their best players are not elite players when it comes to playoffs. Have you ever watched a game where you said, a playoff game where you said, man, what did I can't believe what DeMar DeRozan just did, or Kyle Lowry? They're not those type of players. And yeah, they can't beat LeBron James. I mean, join the crowd, join the line. It's like all the teams in the '90s, the Knicks in Cleveland, that couldn't get by, Michael Jordan. It's the same deal. Now, Masai Ujiri, the GM, the president of the Raptors, the chief executive, he didn't hire Dwayne Casey. They did get along, but obviously he feels like the Nets coach, whether it's Mike Budenholzer or somebody else, is going to be able to get these guys past LeBron James. I mean, we're never going to see that with this team. I just don't think they have the roster to do it as long as LeBron is playing at a high level and he's playing with, very good, other players. It doesn't have to be Kyrie Irving. I mean, they destroyed that series. But that came down, guys. You saw it. Game 1. Worst 7 minutes in Raptors history, I called it. Last 4 regulation or so, first 3 of overtime, where they missed 15 of 16 shots, a lot of layups and putbacks, and they scored 5 points, and that was the whole series. From there, mental toughness they lack against LeBron. I think they're deer in the headlights, but also comes down to, if you're going to beat LeBron James, you got to take him out with big-time players, proven playoff performers, difference makers. Raptors don't have that.
SiriusXM NBA Radio's Mitch Lawrence, Forbes, the sporting news, kind enough to join us here as we get ready for Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. We know Boston is up 1-0. We'll have plenty on the NBA draft and offseason with Mitch right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Thanks, pal.
Great, guys. Enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.